Your eyes on the times, you walk ready to speak up. But with so many problems, you're exhausted trying to keep up.
This is the Church Politics Podcast, where you can get political commentary from a biblical worldview. We're not trying to be conservative or progressive. We're trying to be Christian in the public square.
And I'm black as heaven. I'm made in God's image. Nobody can change my settings. Hey man, cut off my knees and put an end to my search. It's easy to sell your soul when you don't know what it's worth.
What you know, good and Camp? You're listening to the And Campaign's Church Politics Podcast with Justin Gibney, a.k.a. Bishop Cooper's grandson. But once again, I'm not alone. I'm here with Atlanta Mays High School's finest, Howard University's finest, the man with the toughest 360 wave game in the Bible Belt, Dr. Jaha Howard. I'm also with another friend who is a businessman extraordinaire, Atlanta Politico, and the man with the toughest suit game in the greater Atlanta area, my brother Cory Roof. Brothers, how are y'all doing, man?
We're doing great.
Doing great, man.
Thanks for the invitation.
Good. As usual, man, I always enjoy having y'all on the show. I don't know if y'all got a chance to watch. It probably just ended. I don't know if you got a chance to watch the memorial service for Charlie Kirk that they did in Arizona. Very some interesting moments. I think the big moment is Erica Kirk, who is his widow now, actually forgave the assassin in her speech. And so I'm going to talk about that in the premium episode, my thoughts on her speech and her forgiving him in front of that crowd, just a week and a half after all of it happened. So if you are a premium subscriber, you will be able to hear what I have to say about that. I'll also be talking about Trump, who during his talk said that the difference between him and Kirk one difference that they had was that Charlie Kirk wanted the best for his enemies and that Trump himself hated his enemies and did not want the best for them. Yes, he said that during the memorial service. So we will get into that in the Patreon premium episode. Okay. All right, guys. So much to talk about. I mean, still what's on a lot of people's minds, as it should be, is this the assassination of Charlie Kirk. But I don't want to go straight into the negative. Let's do some positive stuff here. Part of what we do, guys, as commentators is we critique, and critiques can come off negative. But none of us, I know you guys, I hope you know me, none of us are negative people. We're just analyzing the good and the bad of certain situations. So I want everybody, as we've been doing for the last few weeks, to give me one thing in politics or culture that's positive. I'm going to start off, and I'm going to talk about the mayor of Memphis, whose name is Paul Young. And I've been impressed with Paul Young. I don't know him personally, but just watching him and kind of following what he's doing, I was impressed with him. He was interviewed by MSNBC, and his responses to commentators and questions that were trying to get him to say something provocative was not only, I think, masterful, but really showed that he's the adult in the room. Mm-hmm. You guys may not have heard that Trump and the governor want to send the National Guard into Memphis. And so he responded to that really with one of the best responses that I've seen. And it showed that he's about governing. He's about doing what's best for his citizens, his constituents. Thank you, and so we'll talk about that later. But I just want to shout out Mayor Paul Young. He's the mayor of Memphis. Go ahead, Jaha.
Hey, I'm gonna shout out the preachers in the pulpit who realize that folks are looking for answers. And folks who used to think they got their answers from their political party right now are just like, that ain't it. Mm-hmm. And I want to shout out Orpheus Hayward over at Renaissance Church of Christ and all the other preachers who are like, look, y'all, people are going to ask me all kinds of questions about politics. And I don't claim to know it all, but I will tell you about Jesus. Yeah. And I will tell you that that's a transformative power in Jesus Christ. So shout out to the preachers who preach a gospel message in season and out of season, and not to dismiss what's happening in culture, but to affirm that Jesus is always the answer. Yeah. So I appreciate that.
And let me tell you something. Pastor Orpheus Hayward can preach. Like he can preach. So if you like looking at sermons and your pastor is your pastor. I'm not saying treat somebody else on YouTube as your pastor, but if you enjoy good sermons or need to hear a good sermon, that man can preach. At least once a week, I'm listening to one of his sermons. So shout out to the pastor on that one.
Hey, I appreciate that.
Cory, what's up, man? What you got?
I've been following, the happenings with Jimmy Kimmel and there was a real bright spot in Rand Paul, his response, because it was nuanced, in that he found the actions, the comments of the FCC chair to be inappropriate. And I think in his words, it was like absolutely inappropriate. But at the same time, was able to highlight things that the Trump administration is doing really, really well within government to stop censorship, um, and then point out some of the things that Democrats did in the past for censorship. So he like really kind of balanced everything out in this behavior, and then he elevated to say, if you agree with his position on this, which is that it was inappropriate for the FCC chair to take this stance, then he's like, I have legislation that will actually provide governance for that, because right now none exists. So these are all just opinions at this point. So I feel like a solution, a balanced approach, and he sort of held his own party to account, all three in one statement. So I thought that was really good.
So he basically said we have a double-minded administration.
I think he said we have a double-minded body politic.
Most administrations are double-minded to some extent. I just had to say that once I couldn't let the moment pass. Forgive me.
So what you're saying is.
So no, I appreciate that, guys, and I want to make sure this is something that we continue to do, because people need to know it's not all bad. There are good things happening, and while there are maybe reason to be concerned, we want to highlight those good things too. As always, I want to give a shout out to all our patrons and supporters for supporting us in what we do and how we do it. You listen to us because there's not too many podcasts that are going to give you informed political commentary from a biblical point of view. You follow us and support the AND campaign because you know that the Christian witness in American politics is not what it needs to be. You know that some Christian conservatives need to be a little less conservative and more Christian. And some Christian progressives need to be a little less progressive and more Christian. And so that's why you listen to the AND campaign. And so I'm encouraging all of you to please consider not just sitting on the sidelines of this movement and kind of complaining about what's going on, but to actually get involved. And you can get involved by donating to the AND campaign, going to andcampaign.org/donate, or going to our Patreon. And where you will get, as I just talked about, you'll get an additional episode. So if you're a monthly subscriber and go to patreon.com/churchpolitics, you will get an additional episode. And man, I really appreciate those who have already given, who are spreading the word. This podcast is still growing because of you. So thank you, and make sure you get involved. Also, we struggle a little bit on YouTube for whatever reason. Make sure if you're watching on YouTube that you like and subscribe, so somehow we can defeat the devil's algorithm that is holding us down. All right. But y'all know what it is. Grab your Bible, get your mind right, and prepare to think, not like a Republican, not like a Democrat, but to think like a Christian. And first, we are going to go to scripture, and I want to go to John 6, verses 56 through 60. All right. And it reads, "Whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood remains in me, and I in them. Just as the living Father sent me, and I live because of the Father, so the one who feeds on me will live because of me. This is the bread that came down from heaven. Your ancestors ate manna and died, but whoever feeds on this bread will live forever." He said this while teaching in the synagogue in Capernaum. On hearing it, many of his disciples said, "This is a hard teaching. Who can accept it?" Who can accept it? At the height of Jesus' ministry, he could have simply told the people what they wanted to hear. He could have kept it safe with his message and not really rocked the boat, and his ministry could have grown at that moment. Instead, he told his followers they had to eat his flesh and drink his blood. He gave them what they called a hard teaching. And after he gave them that hard teaching, if you read a little bit below, many of his followers walked away. He was willing to say the truth and say what he had to say rather than just keep this large crowd around him. Part of bearing the cross in the public square, part of discipleship is speaking unpleasant truths at inconvenient times. And that's something we all have to be deliberate about doing. And I'm not just talking about being a conservative and correcting progressives or being black and correcting white evangelicals or vice versa. I'm talking about speaking to people you love and rely on and like to be around and saying, we're getting this wrong. And being willing to risk being misunderstood, risking being cut off, risking being talked about, being isolated, folks bringing you up in that chat group that they didn't add you to. That's cross-bearing. And again, I'm not talking about some type of contrarian gimmick either, right? Disagreeing just to be provocative or disagreeing with both sides just to be unique and sound smart. No, I'm talking about doing it when it needs to be done. I truly believe it's time for Christians, especially Christian leaders, to say to their tribe, we're responding to this assassination in the wrong way. And many of the viral videos I see coming out of prominent pulpits are wrong. I'm glad that Jaha brought up some actually good things that are coming out. And thank God for all the pastors who may not be as prominent, who are saying the right thing at this moment, right? Christians all over the spectrum, in my opinion, have made this assassination about them and their most important issue. Instead of seeing this as a moment for moral clarity and grace. This is first and foremost about the sanctity of life. It's not about you right now. So I want to ask everybody out there a question. Are you taking tough and unpopular positions when truth or grace call for it? Or does your witness just happen to always be aligned with the current vibe of your tribe? Now, Cory and I just went on the deep end with Lecrae, and so that podcast will be coming out soon. And I think there'll be some things said that people might not like, but I think there's a lot of things said that people really need to hear. Jaha, well, Cory, we'll start with Cory. Cory, talk to me about the importance as a Christian of being willing to take unpopular positions.
You know, I look at the two of you on the screen, and I know this is true in my life. I think all of us, our public reputation centers around taking unpopular positions. Sort of in the counter narrative for our tribe. And me as a black conservative, I watched afar what Jaha went through while campaigning from his own side, and then I remember many years ago talking to you, Justin, and you're the first person that I knew that was thinking about it in a more sort of structured way. And it was around the firing of the Atlanta police chief,
Yep.
and I remember I remember talking to my wife like, yeah, he was talking about building infrastructure that can allow people to stand up for their values and their principles. And so, I think it's very important. And I think as you go through history, you'll see those heroes are always the heroes who stood up. There are no heroes who are heroes because they kind of went with the flow. And so I think it's very important. I'll just say this last thing. When I was ordained, I think I was being licensed actually. Um, Many years ago, the sermon that was preached was decisive and divisive.
Hmm.
And he used the ministry of Jesus Christ. And he talked to all of us who were candidates for licensure to be decisive. Don't be wishy-washy. And if you're decisive, you're going to be divisive, and that you're going to have to be willing to deal with that.
Yeah, no, that's good. And one of the things I worry about, you make some good points, and I will say this: whether you agree or not, everybody on this call, everybody on this podcast has taken some tough stances, and so I appreciate you guys for that. And that's part of the reason that we're doing this, together. One thing that I've noticed too, guys, is again, like I said, you have to be deliberate about doing it, because if you just kind of go along, things that your tribe is saying are right that are wrong, you just stop noticing it. Or you right,
Mm.
like you have to really be
I
paying
agree.
attention, be discerning, and be running it through biblical scrutiny all the time. And you need to not just do that by yourself, you need to do it with groups of people. But we can just accept, okay, the other side's always wrong, so I'm not paying complete attention. We're probably right on this, and we could be dead wrong. Jaha, give me your thoughts on this, taking unpopular positions as a Christian.
Yeah, the unpopular positions, my prayer is that it's based on something principled. And when situations come up, I think it's very revealing on where we really stand. We're looking at the political landscape right now, where we say we're about free speech, and then the situation changes, and all of a sudden it may not be free speech. We
Yeah.
say we're about, say, smaller government or bigger government. We say we're about equality or equity, but then all of a sudden there's these situations that come up and things get revealed, especially when we don't directly benefit from it. So I think our principles are on display. And as Christians in the public square, those Christian principles should always stand firm and be willing to take the hit if God's going to be glorified in it. If
Mm,
God's going to be glorified. What
mm,
we found is that we start realizing that our allegiance to, say, a party or ideology sometimes is overshadows our allegiance to Christ.
yeah, no,
And,
that's
and we
real.
and we justify it,
Mm,
maybe us for our jobs, or whether it's our crowds or whatever it is. We have our reasons, but God will allow things to happen just to show you and others around you where we really stand.
and
And
let's be
it's time
honest.
to stand up.
Yeah, that's good. Let's be honest. These decisions and these positions have consequences, right? So it's not just cute, like, oh, I did this and got a little tap on the wrist and it's over. No, like
No. Yeah.
even in your social group, right? Nobody wants to be isolated when they're social group. Nobody wants to friends to say they're not conservative enough or not progressive enough or not black enough because they didn't take a certain position, which all of that should be ridiculous to Christians, but it's not, because socially we want that acceptance, we want that validation, and at some point you have to say the truth is more important. And I think that's exactly um, what Jaha was getting at. But talk to me a little bit about, practically speaking, because part of the issue of this is sometimes we're too practical, sometimes we're too pragmatic, and we're thinking more about the material things and the outcomes of what we do rather than how is God looking at this,
Hmm.
right? And that's, to me, a huge thing with our peers. I talk about it in my book, Careerism, where a lot of our peers put their careers before everything. We were given that idol very early on.
Yeah.
And we made a lot of decisions when it came to family, when it came to religion, when it came to what we'll say about our faith, based on how that will affect our careers. Now, tell me if I'm lying. I think our generation really had that bad.
Yeah.
And sadly, some of us, even late, are starting to figure out, man, even if everything goes right in my career and I have a lot of success, it's still empty.
Yeah.
Right. And I done pushed away Christ for all these years. I done pushed away all these other values for all these years. And it was a lie. Like, it's empty. That a career is a means. It's not an end. But I think it was sold to us early on as an end. Jaha, talk to me about the consequences and practically how can Christians think through these consequences and still do what's right?
Yeah. I think it's first to maybe do an inventory of your allegiances. I'll give an example. I feel very strongly about being a Howard University guy like that. I mean, the HU love is real. I feel strongly about being an alpha. I love my alpha brothers. Like I'm from Atlanta, so I'm gonna go to bat for Atlanta. Like all those things are part of like my identity. They are part of my identity. But then things will happen. And I noticed this. This is like HBCU culture, right? We have a way of being so celebratory of our HBCUs that we won't call out the mess because we don't want the criticism. And then, so we have this way of not standing on certain principles because we don't want to invite the scrutiny or the attack. When it comes to fraternities, right? So we're so busy trying to promote how great our fraternity is that we don't call out when we're really doing a lot. We might be doing too much for show and not enough action, or maybe we're speaking out on all these things except the stuff that maybe matters the most, but we won't do it because guess what? It doesn't feel good to be on the out, right? When you're used to being on the in. So just do an inventory, and this has helped for me. And then God will show you if you don't do it yourself. He'll show you if you're depending too much on those allegiances. Because ultimately, God's saying, I want you to depend on me alone. And you're worried about practical, your resources, your this, your networks. And God is sitting there as the source, looking at you like, you got questions about your resources? And I'm the source? Tell me more about that.
No, that's good. Cory, what are your thoughts?
I think allegiances are very high. I also think identity, and I think that's probably where you were going, Jaha. Like a lot of people, I mean, you and I kind of had an off screen conversation about this, Justin. A lot of people see themselves as black first. And so before they see themselves as Christian. And, for me, it's like, um, I think the challenge is to see yourself as not being a citizen here. See yourself as being first a follower of Christ and identify along those lines in a very real way. As strongly as you identify with your race, as strongly as you identify with being a Ruth or a Gibney or a Howard, like you identify with being with Christ first. And if you walk on those lines, then you'll see yourself kind of taking those risks because you take the risk to stand on things when it comes to your race and to stand on things you were talking earlier just about we've been sort of conditioned towards our career early. We get conditioned to defend our last name early. You don't let nobody talk about your mama or if your brother out there and somebody's in his face, you got to join in. So you learn early on that you defend being a Ruth more no matter what. And we have something in our house that we say a lot, like family first, and but really it's Christ first. And even above your family, even above your marriage, even above
Yeah.
your children, even
Yeah.
above your race, you got to be a Christian first.
Amen.
Yeah, and let's be honest. Being black and Christian is obviously not mutually exclusive, right? You don't have to separate
Yeah,
the two. However, although even some of the people I love that would never say that they put it first, when as they respond to certain issues, it's like, bruh, which one is first? Am I defending myself? Am I defending things before I'm showing grace?
Yeah.
And that's when I think one of the biggest problems that's happening right now with this assassination. I think there's a lot of, I got to defend this. I got to make sure nobody thinks, that somebody who offended me did anything right or should ever have any compassion shown towards them. That's culture war. That's not gospel. And that's one of the biggest messages I have to people today. Those issues matter. And things that were said that we don't like, that were hurtful, that were harmful, that have social impacts, That's real. Nobody's wiping that away. It's just not the main issue right now. And I think that's what people need to hear and see, and they don't want to. And I can already tell. So y'all pray for me because we know it's coming, but this is what we're here for. Thank God that he's given us the opportunity to work and say the things that need to be said, and understand that sometimes it's going to be us that don't want to hear what needs to be said, right? We're not always going to be in the position of saying it. Sometimes we need to receive it. We'll be right back on the Church Politics Podcast.
Your eyes on the times, you walk ready to speak up. But with so many problems, you're exhausted trying to keep up.
This is the Church Politics Podcast, where you can get political commentary from a biblical worldview. We're not trying to be conservative or progressive. We're trying to be Christian in the public square.
And I'm black as heaven. I'm made in God's image. Nobody can change my settings. Hey man, got off my knees and put an end to my search. It's easy to sell your soul when you don't know what it's worth.
And we are back on the Church Politics Podcast. Again, I am with Dr. Jaha Howard and Cory Ruth. And we're having some good conversations. Next, I want to talk about this Jimmy Kimmel issue. All right, I was just in Cory sort of stole my thunder on this a little bit, but I thought it was a very good example of good things going on in politics. According to NBC, I should say, earlier today, Senator Rand Paul, who is a Republican from Kentucky, said that the Federal Communications Commission chair, Brendan Carr, his comments basically threatening to take action against Disney last week were absolutely inappropriate. So basically what happened, Jimmy Kimmel, after the assassination, a couple of days after the assassination, Jimmy Kimmel goes on his show and basically says, you know, MAGA's doing everything they can to try to act like the assassin wasn't MAGA, when he actually basically implying that he was actually a MAGA motivated assassin. Number one, that's just inaccurate factually. Everything, even the conversations with his parents and friends, points to the fact that he was more influenced by leftward influences. All right. So that's number one. Number two, right after the assassination, that just wasn't a appropriate thing to say. And so it shouldn't have been said. So then Carr, the FCC chair, jumps in and basically threatens Disney and ABC, threatening to revoke their broadcasting licenses. And there's talk about a certain merger that was going down, and there may have been implications there. And basically, Senator Paul is saying that is inappropriate. It shouldn't have happened. He went on to say that Brendan Carr's got no business weighing in on this. But people have to also realize that the comment was despicable. He has the right to say it, but it was bad. And here's before we even go into this, I want people on both sides to realize two things. So as soon as I put up that what the administration did was wrong, I had people on the right saying, well, how do you know the administration even did anything? Nobody said there's no clear, yes, they did. You have a Republican, Rand Paul, saying that they did put pressure and did make threats. So let's get that off the table. All right. Number two, there have been I haven't seen a whole lot of people on the left admitting that what Jimmy Kimmel said was completely inappropriate. It was inaccurate, and it was terribly insensitive and partisan right after somebody has been assassinated. So I'm hoping we can both say, okay, let's admit those two things so we can move on to have a legitimate conversation about this. Cory, since you brought it up, man, and you talked about it a little bit, what's your view just on this whole Kimmel situation? I feel like he shouldn't have said it. He had the right to say it. We don't need to enter into the cancel culture. It's pretty hypocritical to me after all this talk about the left's cancel culture that the right's going to enter into this, and also hypocritical that the left is going to cry about cancel culture after doing it for the last decade and a half. What are your thoughts on that?
So everything that you said, I agree with. So that's the baseline, right? So I think there's other dynamics here that exasperated this for Jimmy Kimmel. So under normal circumstances, if Jimmy Kimmel's ratings are doing well, his show is bringing in a lot of money, Um, late night as a industry component is doing well. And some FCC chairman goes on a conservative blog, a podcast, and makes a direct threat. I think ABC is like, I don't care. I'll see you in court. So I do think that there's whether or not what Jimmy Kimmel said was wrong and whether or not what the FCC chairman said was inappropriate, the consequences of it all, I think, were exasperated by the market realities there. And then I'll say this last thing, and that is that the FCC chair is a player in media and what is deemed to be normal media behavior. What's said on TV, what's done on TV. In 1961, Chairman Minow gave a speech that he called the vast wasteland, talking about television. And that speech ended up putting a lot of cultural pressure on broadcasters to diversify and add more like documentaries and news magazine shows, and also more children's shows. Like Sesame Street is a direct result of that speech that he gave. And that speech was considered to be a threat to broadcasters to change your programming or I'm going to come after you. And so Chairman Powell, under George Bush, Secretary of State Colin Powell's son was over the FCC. Remember when the infamous Super Bowl Janet Jackson thing where, and he got deeply involved. He put Howard Stern under a lot of pressure, a lot of suits against Howard Stern. And so FCC has always been a player in these sorts of things. And at different periods in time, they're more assertive probably than normal. And so I think that's a normal consideration. So when you consider the market reality, then you consider the regulatory realities of having to deal with the FCC of any given administration, mostly has been conservative when they assert themselves at the FCC. Um, Democrat administrations would normally assert themselves in like the EPA, for instance. So I think all of those, the market realities and the regulatory realities, exasperated the consequence that came on Jimmy Kimmel.
Okay. Are you going so far as to say it justified what Brendan did?
No, I don't think it justified what he did. I just think it's a reality, right? So my point is, I think it's less of a question about whether it.
So it's not justified. You gonna turn me back into an attorney? So you're saying it's not justified?
I don't like how he did what he did. I don't like that he went out there and made the statement. Primarily, I don't like it stylistic. Like that's not something we need to hear. You are empowered to be the chairman of the FCC. If you got a problem with what Jimmy Kimmel said, have your people call ABC's people and have that conversation. And so I don't like it stylistically. I don't think it's appropriate. I don't think it helps the cause of free speech, but it's not new. It's not outside of what FCC chairmen have done in the past is my point.
Jaha, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, there's a lot of good points brought up. It seems like there's just several things that are true. There's so much context. I mean, when you have a $6 billion, I think I read, merger happening in the background that the FCC is like directly involved in for the parent companies here. When you have a Disney that's already had its fights in Florida with Governor DeSantis and the whole Disney being too woke during the last several years and all of that going on. And then you have these parent companies that are kind of very Trump leaning, very conservative companies that are involved here. It makes it very interesting. And then here we have Kimmel, who is like very known. Ratings not nowhere near as good as what you would think, but very well known, becomes a lightning rod. And when you have a administration that likes to always look tough and talk, having their folks say something like, "We can do this the easy way or the hard way," that's just not right. And at the end of the day, if we say, this goes back to what we mentioned earlier about principles, if we say that we want to err on the side of having free speech, I think that those questionable areas, we have to be fair on either side, right? So whether it's something that's maybe not the best comment at all. Kimmel said some things that weren't very tasteful, but he should be allowed to say it because of free speech. And on the flip side, if there's some things that are not very tasteful that may be affecting a liberal kind of government, uh, they should be able to say that as well. Other part of the context that we didn't mention is that network television has been very left leaning. I mean, going in on George Bush for good reason, going in on Donald Trump for good reason, and then being very gentle with Biden. Very gentle oftentimes when it comes to Obama. And again, that we have to be honest. So when it comes to our principles, things that we say that we're about, we got to be even. We have to apply it both sides. And I think the idea of treating somebody the way you want to be treated, hey, like keep that same energy on both sides. And Justin, you brought this up, the hypocrisy. I mean, we just pick and choose when you know, when we want to use these principles. And I think all of that undermines trust to the everyday American citizen. And I think all of that is just going to make it worse for us in the future. Because what the average person is going to say is, you know what, all these institutions are corrupt. Everyone's just using it to flex their muscle and get what they want at the end of the day. So why should I even care? Why should I even vote? So I think all of this just kills trust. So we got to be about some principles somewhere.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, can I just say, give a flashpoint that a lot of people on the right are sharing is this, that he made a threat on a podcast, a direct threat, right? He mentioned Jimmy Kimmel's comments and he said we could do this the easy way or the hard way. But there wasn't a direct action. So like Zuckerberg, when he testified, he said that the Biden administration contacted Meta and told them, take these people down, deprioritize these statements or this speech on your platform, do these things and threaten them with antitrust action directly. And so I think a lot of people who are on the opposite side of this issue, they're saying, well, what's the threshold? Is the threshold in an official FCC action where, they're bringing up charges like Powell did against Howard Stern? Is the threshold actually reaching out to the network and saying, hey, take these people off your platform or fire this person? Or is it going on an unofficial channel and making a threat? And so I think when you put it in the context of what has happened in the past, I don't think it rises to to those levels. But I think this is a flashpoint period. It's an inflection point. This is an opportunity for lawmakers like Rand Paul to pass legislation that governs how the FCC chair should behave, because really we're just giving our opinions, and even if we're aligned on our opinions, at the end of the day the opinion of the FCC chair differs from us clearly because he decided to do that.
I would just say we have to be careful reaching back in the past to find worst examples as if that justifies what happened.
It's not a justification, for sure.
Right?
Not a justification.
So it doesn't justify that he did something that he shouldn't have done. That said, yes, the Biden administration, when they did that with Zuckerberg and Meta and all that, was absolutely wrong. And I said that from the beginning. That's absolutely wrong. That's not what their job is. That was a violation. And just, and I think we can get caught up so much in that. Well, which one's worse? Hey, how about they both violated the same principle? And we can talk about which one was worse or whatever. It's still a violation, right? If I steal $1,000 and Cory steals $10,000, guess what? I'm still wrong, even if I talk about Cory stealing $10,000. Yeah. Right? And so I think we have to remember that in these conversations. We'll be right back on the Church Politics Podcast.
Your eyes on the times, you walk ready to speak up. But with so many problems, you're exhausted trying to keep up.
This is the Church Politics Podcast, where you can get political commentary from a biblical worldview. We're not trying to be conservative or progressive. We're trying to be Christian in the public square.
And I'm black as heaven. I'm made in God's image. Nobody can change my settings. Hey man, got off my knees and put it into my search. It's easy to sell your soul when you don't know what it's worth.
And we are back on the Church Politics Podcast. Let me say this. So many times when a state or local leader gets interviewed on national news or on a national platform, they automatically play partisan, right? They automatically are like, hey, I got to be on the talking points of my party. You know, I got to make a name for myself right now, right? I want to be in the good graces of the top folks. So let me make sure I say what those folks will want me to say. I thought we saw an example of an adult in the room, someone who is really just about governing. And that came from Memphis Mayor Paul Young. So Memphis Mayor Paul Young was interviewed by MSNBC, and I want y'all to listen to just a few seconds of this interview.
Mayor Young, if we can just start with some clarity. I've talked to a lot of mayors across the country. I've talked to Muriel Bowser of Washington, D.C. We've spoken with Mayor Johnson. I'm wondering, all the mayors say the same thing. They say, look, we want the federal resources from the federal government, and that the federal government has cut the budgets. Do you want the National Guard in your city?
No, we definitely want a partnership with the federal government on providing the resources that we need. We have seen significant reduction in crime over the last 2 years, and we want to keep that trend going. And we feel like those resources that can be invested in things like the prevention and intervention and the groups that we have out on the streets that are working with these individuals and changing the course of their lives. That's one way. And also investing with our law enforcement partners. That's the way to really change the course of crime in our communities. But we understand that a decision has been made that the federal government and the governor want to send the National Guard. And our goal is to make sure that we have an opportunity to work with them and align what their activities look like when they come into this community.
Mr. Mayor, help me understand, because I'm a little bit confused. How long has the Republican governor of the state of Tennessee been the governor?
I think Governor Lee has been in office for about 7 years. Next year will be his last year.
7 years.
Yeah.
7 years. And he's just noticing now that Memphis has a crime problem. So much so under his watch, he did nothing about it. I'm really helping me understand how, before you get to federal resources, as a former statewide official, lieutenant governor of my state, I know that if there was a particular area that had to deal with crime, and certainly there were parts of Maryland that did, the first call for help was not from the federal government. It was working with the city, working with the county, working with the municipalities to create solutions in our state. And if it was beyond our capacity, sir, then maybe we would call for federal help. But so I don't understand what's different. It wouldn't have anything to do with the fact that Memphis is a largely black municipality, would it?
Yeah. So Memphis is the largest majority black city in the nation. It's something that I wear as a badge of honor, and I think it's something that we should be proud of. I will say that Governor Lee, certainly he can speak for himself, but I will say that they have been partners with the city on a number of initiatives they've supported with Tennessee Highway Patrol, helping us on our interstates, and they provide significant funding in the form of violent crime intervention funds that help with some of those intervention and prevention strategies that I talked about. I'll have to let him speak to his position on the National Guard itself, but my goal as mayor of the city is to make sure that whatever decisions that are made that are outside the control of me as mayor, that we figure out how to turn it into a win for our community, and that's my goal in this situation.
So there's the clip, and I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say, because it sounded like to me that the MSNBC commentators definitely wanted Mayor Young to say something provocative. But it sounded like he had the presence of mind and was a serious enough leader that he was thinking, man, I have a city to run. And it sounds like he actually has a good relationship with the Tennessee governor, Bill Lee. He didn't want to mess that up just to be throwing out provocative stuff on the airwaves. So he says, if you heard him, he says, no, I don't want the National Guard to come. All right, I don't want the National Guard to come to Memphis. But it sounds like he reckoned with the fact that they're coming, and I need to make the best out of it. How can I make the best out of it for my constituents? I just thought that was, I thought that shows, hey, man, I'm about business. I'm not all that partisan stuff. Y'all can take it away. I got a job to do. Jaha, what were your thoughts about Mayor Young?
Very impressed with his comments. Absolutely, looking at the clip, we didn't discuss it beforehand. I was thinking the same thing. Like, they kept setting it up like, hey, let me give you all these tools so you can shoot at the administration and shoot at the president. And he continued pivoting to what's best for Memphis.
Mm-hmm.
We're so used to politicians seeming like they're positioning for the next thing. That next thing, like this maybe does nothing for my constituents now, but it's going to play well for statewide or state. It's going to play well when I run for whatever. And I actually felt like I was watching somebody who was not making a decision or making comments about while positioning for the next thing. He was making comments that focused on what's best for Memphis, where, as he would say, they're doing a lot of things really well. Hey, they're coming. So I'm focusing on how we can work together so that way we can still achieve these goals that we have in place. We have some things already going on. We have a good relationship with the governor. They've already provided all these resources and we got good collaboration. Like, he just didn't take the bait and say, hey, okay, well, can Memphis benefit? Let's work it out. And I love that answer.
And guess what? Again, as we talked about, doing the right thing or taking it, I don't think that was the position he took. Part of it was not a popular position for Democrats. So some of them probably said, oh, man, he's selling out. He blah, blah, blah. No, he's doing his job. And me taking care of my constituents is is more important than me shining in a partisan way on national television. I have a job to do. Yeah. And too many local politicians or local leaders just try to pop off in those situations. And I was, like you said, it didn't look like he was posturing for a higher position. That's the type of temperament we need in leaders. I hope one day I get the chance to vote for somebody like that, because that was legit. Go ahead, Cory.
Yeah, well, I also liked how he said the two things I loved that he said was, whenever something happens in my city that is outside of my control as the mayor, my job is to figure out a way to make sure Memphis win. And so I thought that was great. Then when I think it was Michael Still tried to give him opportunity to attack the governor, I think he's like, the governor has helped me here, and there. I actually went and listened to an interview with the governor. I think in this situation, he's spoken about the least, but he has the most amount of control over what happens there. Right. And he said that he and the mayor meet once a month in person.
Wow, that's
to
awesome.
Talk about everything that they're going through, and how they can work together. And he also said that 6 months ago, he and the mayor started having conversations with the federal government about ways that they can collaborate. And they put a strategy together because Memphis borders Mississippi and Arkansas. And so they have this collaboration between the Memphis mayor and the police department, and the same people from the Mississippi side and the Arkansas side. And they did this surge with U.S. Marshals and the FBI 3 months ago. That was done quietly, and they made 500 arrests across their various jurisdictions. And so this is actually phase 2 of that, which is how this has worked so well. How can we escalate it? And I thought, God, I mean, more of this needs to come out, or this kind of how everybody's working together. And maybe they can't bring it out in any other way than they have, like with the mayor just being responsible. And I love the fact that he went on MSNBC. Let me just say that. I love that. My biggest criticism of a lot of black Republicans, and I used Daniel Cameron in Kentucky. He was the AG in Kentucky when the door was kicked down, Breonna Taylor's, and she was shot to death. And he only went on Fox. And I'm like, can you go and talk to your people? Even if you can't give them what they want to hear, you can have a responsible conversation. And I think it would have mattered to black people to know there's a black man who is the attorney general of Kentucky. And even though he's in a different party, he's coming on Breakfast Club, he's coming on whatever channel and making sure he's communicating directly to us about what we can expect and what happens. And this is the process and these are the dynamics. And just as responsibly as this mayor went on MSNBC was not an easy thing for him to do.
Yeah.
And so I thought I got a lot of respect for how he did that.
Yeah, and I love to see that kind of collaboration. When Governor Perdue was in office, Mayor Kasim Reed, they had a very close relation. They didn't agree on a lot of stuff, but they worked together. Governor Deal. Yeah. Thank you. When Governor Deal was in office, they had a very close relationship, not because they agreed on everything in a partisan way, but they had to get things done. The governor knew that Atlanta's a big part of what happens in Georgia in general, whether it comes to economics or whatever. And the mayor knew he needed the governor, so they worked together to get legislation done and all that. I'm so glad to hear that the mayor of Memphis is doing the same thing. I don't agree with Bill Lee on everything. I do have a very close friend who works high up in Bill Lee's office. And so I know there are good things happening from that administration as well. So, yeah, I was pleasantly surprised to see that there, because there's so much pressure to show out when you get in those situations. There's so much pressure to give the partisan ideological talking points so everybody can put it on clips. Say he told them, look what he said about the governor. Look what he said about Trump. That ain't governing, guys. Let's be serious people. Your tribe is going to get you to do stuff that's going to compromise your ability to get things done. You got to be able to turn around and say, no, I have a job to do. And that just doesn't happen all that often. Go ahead, Jaha.
I just want to mention quickly that when we don't do that, that's a real sacrifice. He stood on principle, but not showing out also hurts fundraising, right? People do this because they can put these clips together. The fundraising just comes rolling in because that's what motivates people to give money. And I just didn't want this conversation to end without acknowledging the money piece. People do it because it pays the bills. And so I just wanted to throw that out there and highlight that he stood on business and principle. I don't know him personally, but I appreciate that, even that clip, because he could have used it as a way to just say, hey, I'm being attacked by Trump, donate $5, and he'd have his campaign coffers fat.
And let me say this, because this goes along with a lot of stuff going on right now. There's no better PR than talking about how you're being attacked by your opponents. People love that. So a lot of the people talking about, man, I'm getting all these threats. Yeah, you are. And you could have kept that to yourself, but you also know that that's great PR. Oh, the other side, the MAGA is attacking me. The progressives are attacking me, blah, blah, blah. Please keep it. Guys, we have to be discerning. And I'm seeing so many people who are not discerning. That is PR in a lot of instances. There's no better PR than to be attacked by your opponents and become a martyr before anybody did anything to you, right? So be careful to get carried away with the threat somebody talking about they're getting and all that. If it's that serious, you need to tell security. It ain't necessarily for you to go spout out on Instagram, right? So anyway, so much more we could talk about. Always enjoy having y'all with me. I thought this was a great episode. I think people are going to appreciate it. So thank you, brothers, for joining me again. And Camp, you know what it is. There's a cross that neither political conservatism nor progressivism is fit to bear. There's a civic hearing in need of faithful witnesses who love social justice and won't surrender the truth to be loved by the world. Politic with the boldness and compassion of Jesus Christ. Until next time, man, Camp. Well, I'll let you.
Your eyes on the times, you walk ready to speak up. But with so many problems, you're exhausted trying to keep up.
This is the Church Politics Podcast, where you can get political commentary from a biblical worldview. We're not trying to be conservative or progressive. We're trying to be Christian in the public square.
And I'm black as heaven. I'm made in God's image. Nobody can change my settings. Hey man, got off my knees and put an end to my search. It's easy to sell your soul when you don't know what it's worth.